book, A Man Without a Country. I know you know that. And he was the man, and the country was the United States. Vonnegut felt that his country had disappeared right under his and the Constitution's feet through what he called the sleaziest, low-comedy, Keystone Cop-style coup d'etat imaginable. He was talking at the time about the Bush administration. And it was a coup d'etat, December 12, 2000. And as David Schwartz, he wrote this piece for Common Dreams about 5 years ago, but were Vonnegut still alive in the post-Bush era, he would not have felt that his country had returned. Still gone. How had our country disappeared? Well, Vonnegut proposed that among the contributing factors was that it had been invaded, as if by the Martians. It had been invaded, this country, by people with a particularly frightening mental illness. People with this illness were termed psychopaths. Now, the term nowadays is antisocial personality disorder. Those are terms for people who are smart, personable, and engaging, but who have no conscience. They're not guided by a sense of right or wrong. They seem to be unaffected by the feelings of others, including feelings of distress caused by their actions. Straying from a decent way of treating people or violating ethical codes causes no anxiety for these people. The anxiety which is what causes the rest of us to moderate our more greedy impulses, but not if you're a psychopath. If most children feel anxiety when they're stealing the forbidden cookie from the cookie jar, psychopaths, when they do it, feel just fine. They devour the cookie, shatter the jar as evidence, and stuff it in the trash can. And when they're accused of stealing cookies, they can argue with apparent sincerity that the cookie jar has been missing for at least a week. They suffer no remorse, no guilt, no shame. They're free to do anything, no matter how harmful. Psychopaths. And they can be very tricky to recognize. The psychiatrist Dr. Hervey Cleckley wrote in his classic book from 1941, The Mask of Sanity, the psychopaths are not technically insane. They don't have a psychosis like schizophrenia. They are experts in appearing normal. They can act the role of a caring, concerned executive, even though they actually do not seem to experience such feelings. If they hurt somebody, they don't modify their behavior. Why should they? There's more on this, and I haven't shared this with you in a long time, and I'm going to when we come back. Stay with us. Book, A Man Without a Country. He's talking about him and the United States. He's talking about psychopaths, which we talk about a lot on this program. And he wrote that what has allowed so many psychopaths to rise so high in corporations and then government, quote, is that they are so decisive. They're going to do something every effing day, and they're not afraid. Unlike normal people, they're never filled with doubts for the simple reason that they don't give an F what happens next. Simply can't. Do this, do that, mobilize the reserves, privatize the public schools, attack Iraq, cut health care, tap everybody's phone, cut taxes on the rich. End quote. So in a country in which much of human culture has been rendered into machines for the manufacture of money, psychopaths are the ideal leaders. They're very focused. They're outcome-oriented. They're frequently charming and usually very bright and able. They can lay off thousands of people or deny people health care or have them waterboarded, and it does not disturb their sleep. They can be impressively confident. Psychopaths can be dynamic leaders of enterprises, but are handicapped by their lack of feelings when it concerns relationships. They may be accomplished captains of industry or senators or surgeons, but their families are frequently abused and miserable. Most psychotherapists have seen the wives or husbands or children of such, accomplished people. Since psychopaths are usually very smart, they can be quite competent at impersonating regular human beings in positions of power. Since they don't care how their actions affect people, they can rise to great height in enterprises dealing with power and money. They can manufacture bombs or run hospitals. Whatever the undertaking, it's all the same. It's just business. The economic system that remains after the destruction of American local cultures has created an excellent employment picture for psychopaths. But the opportunities open to them are now so vast that there is apparently now an actual psychopath labor shortage. At least that's the only explanation you can find for the rise of a cadre of psychopathic leaders who resemble the usual type in all ways but one. They're simply not that smart anymore. You only have to look at right-wing Christian fundamentalists to see the peculiar emergence of a second string of psychopaths. You know, the United States has been endowed with abundant resources, and there have always been a more than sufficient supply of psychopaths of the first intellectual grade to supply corporate suites and their subsidiary, the Congress. Why is there now a downgrade to the dumb ones? Like the lowering of standards for military recruits to deal with a shortage of cannon fodder. Well, it's no secret, for example, that the Koch brothers and others of the super-rich seem to have undertaken a final push to consolidate control through the conversion of a marginally democratic to an essentially fascist state, extreme right-wing, authoritarian, and demagogic. This kind of government is ideal for control of a population by the moneyed elite. To carry this out requires the employment of many kept politicians to excite and misdirect scared and angry and ignorant voters. Lest the citizenry realize who stole their money and storm their castles with torches, the rapacious elite need politicians who will carry out the work of redirecting anger at teachers or labor unions or the poor. One can only conclude that the people who now own the country couldn't find any first-rate psychopaths to carry out their work. Or maybe the smart ones were all occupied, so they had to go to the second stringers, people who could actually believe what they were told to say. In other words, we're a country that has become second best, even in the quality of our psychopaths. Now, that was written by one David Schwartz, PhD. He practices psychotherapy in Ithaca, New York. And I found it very interesting the first time I read it 4 years ago. Just thought you might like a re-up on that one. And when I read this again today, I couldn't help but think about the leaders in this country right now, religious, economic, and political. And I cannot think of one. I honestly can't, with the possible exception of Bernie Sanders, who is not at least a sociopath. I am not. I'm not qualified to identify somebody as a psychopath like a therapist can, but sociopathology is easy to see and smell and identify. The screaming that came from the right-wingers today when the president of Missouri University resigned is a classic example. I mean, what more do you need to realize how the sociopaths, psychopaths, whatever, have acquired so much power in this country? Well, again, if the time ever comes when we, the people, have had enough, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 million of us, which is a very small percentage. Don't forget, 10% of the population of this country would be 33 million. 5% would be 16 million. We're talking about 1 or 2 million, maybe 3. If that number of people ever took to the streets and said, you know what, we've had enough, well, that might be the beginning of change. All right, we'll be back directly. Stay with us. I'm Mike Malloy.